I am failing epically when it comes to accomplishing this goal.
1, 2, 3, let's switch this up.
Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Today I'm going to be going through some of my goals, kind of just doing like a check-in to see like where I'm at this point in the year versus like the things that I said I wanted to do this year. So we're gonna go through a couple of different like stats and also goals. So if you were interested to see my progress, then keep on watching. This is basically just a way for me to hold myself accountable and for me to figure out what things I'm slacking on that like I make commitments to at the beginning of the year, so I can try to prioritize them going into the second half of the year. I'm going to be pulling my stats from Storygraph, mainly because Storygraph just has superior stats compared to like Goodreads, and also my Goodreads is probably not up to date if I'm being quite honest. There's probably a couple of books that I've read that are not that I haven't added to my Goodreads yet. So we're going to use Storygraph stats because those are always up to date and correct. So starting off with the book goal, like how many books I wanted to read for the year. I said that I wanted to read 48 books by the end of the year, which is a huge goal for me because if you were to ask me how many books I read last year, I think it was like 33. But that I also didn't start reading until July. Like literally I wasn't reading books until July of last year. So if you ask me like what my reading, how many books I read for like 2021, 0. 2020, 0. 19, 0. 18, 0. Like I was not a reader until a year ago. So to put 48 books was like, whew, okay, hopefully I can do this. My real goal like for myself is like 60, but I didn't want to set a goal that like I wasn't going to reach, because when you set unattainable goals, it kind of like discourages you. So I figured 48 was a good number. And I'm happy to tell you that I have so far read 42 out of my 48 books. So I will definitely, unless something happens and I end up like incapacitated for the remainder of the year, I will exceed my reading goal for this year, which is what I wanted to do. Like I said, like low-key in my mind, I want to hit 60. But if I don't hit 60, at least I know that I will absolutely hit 48 by the end of the year. So brava to me for that. Next up, we're going to talk about my average star ratings, just to kind of get an idea of like whether the books I've been reading this year are like good or bad. And it looks like my average rating is 4.01, which I'm happy with. That means that overall, like on average, the books that I'm picking for myself to read are books that I'm enjoying, which means that I'm having a pretty good reading year so far. There's a couple of 3.5s, 3.75s, quite a few 4.5s, which I'm very happy about. And then I like the fact that I have a couple of like 4.7 and even some 5-star books. So overall, I think I'm doing a pretty good job at picking up books that I am going to actually enjoy. Next up, we're going to talk about the genres that I've been reading, like my most read genres. And I'm really just going to focus on like the top 5. And the first one is romance, which is surprising to me just because if you were to have asked me last year, would I expect this? My answer would have been absolutely not. Like I don't consider myself like a romance girly. Like I don't consider myself like being into romance in general. But I do like rom-coms because I like the comedy aspect of it, and like the romance lovey-dovey stuff, like oh that's cute or whatever, but like I'm really there for the comedy. Next is contemporary, which is interesting because I wouldn't describe myself as being much of like a contemporary fiction reader either. So that's interesting that that is the second one on the list. Thriller, which is number 3, I'm not surprised at because that is what I would expect to be like higher on the list. I'm surprised that contemporary is higher than thriller. That is surprising. And then fantasy, which also not surprised because I do dabble in fantasy every now and then when I can. And then young adult is a little bit surprising, but I think that some of the rom-coms and even some of the mysteries maybe that I've been reading are YA. So I'm okay with that. I'm not mad at these top 5. I just wish they were in a different order. I don't like the fact that contemporary is so high on this list. That is so weird to me. And I'm gonna just scooch over so that I can pop up my goals onto the screen, and we're gonna talk about my goals that I set for myself. If you want to see the full video for when I set these goals and like why I set these goals, I will link that video somewhere in the cards and also down below in the description box. But for now, we're just gonna talk about my progress through said goals. So the first goal was to read 5 manga. Have I read 5 manga? No, I have not. But I have read 2. So that should count for something. I can hit this goal. Like, I have more manga that I need to read because I still need to finish volumes 4, 5, and 6 for Death Note so that I can finish the series, which is another goal that we'll get to a little bit later. But to finish the series, I have 4, 5, and 6 that I need to read. So if I read 4, 5, and 6 and combine that with 2 and 3, which I've already read, that will be my 5 for the year. Am I going to finish 4, 5, and 6? I don't know. To keep it a buck, I don't know. I want to. Obviously, I aspire and desire to do such a thing. But realistically, like with time and stuff like that, I just don't know if that's going to happen. The next goal was to read at least one nonfiction. And not only have I read one nonfiction, I have read 3 so far. So I read Ace, I read Hood Feminism, and I read How to Date Men When You Hate Men. So I have well over and surpassed that goal. So I'm very proud of myself because I really don't read nonfiction. The next goal is to finish 3 series. Have I finished 3 series? I haven't. Have I finished any series? I also haven't. Like I said, I could finish Death Note, and at least that will be 1. I would also like to read A Court of Silver Flame, and if I do that, I will at least, you know, finish out ACOTAR, or at least the books that have been released up to this point for ACOTAR. So that will be 2 series. I have no idea what the 3rd series would be that I will be able to finish between now and the end of the year. So I don't know. We will have to circle back around to this at a later time. But the moral of the story is that I am failing epically when it comes to accomplishing this goal. Next up is to read 2 Christian books. Have I read 2 Christian books? No, I have not read any. I actually got a couple of Christian books during Stuff Your Kindle Day. So I have plenty to choose from. I just have to actually read them. I feel like if I like set time aside to actually do it and get it done, like that is something that I can accomplish. I definitely think though that I can get 2 done by the end of the year. I think it's doable. The next goal was for me to read at least 1 anthology / collection. So that could be a collection of short stories, poetry, essays, like anything in that realm. And I have a couple of books to choose from, but I have to be in the right mood to do it, and that's why I haven't done it yet. I just haven't been in the mood to like read poetry because I don't understand poetry, and I haven't been in the mood to read essays, and I just haven't gotten around to reading short stories. Actually, I take that back. Does Assassin's Blade count? Because that is a collection of short stories, no? So if that counts, then I actually have accomplished this goal. The next goal was to read 5 books out of my comfort zone. And I would say that I have accomplished this goal because I've read 3 nonfiction, which is outside of my comfort zone. Like if you ask me how many nonfiction I read last year, it was just 1. And even this year, like out of the 42 books or 41, however, whatever number I said earlier, out of that many books, only 3 of them have been nonfiction. I would say that nonfiction is out of my comfort zone, so I have 3 of those. And then I also read 2 horror, which is also out of my comfort zone because I did not read any horror last year. Like the 2 horror books that I read this year was my first experience reading horror. Those 5 I think count towards me reading out of my comfort zone. I do have an anthology, or something, I don't know if I would call it an anthology, but it is a short story collection that I'll talk about in a later video when I do my haul. I'll talk about that book. I do plan on reading that. So when I read that, I think that will, and that also is a horror book, so I think that will be both horror and short story collection, so that will also count towards my 5 books. So then I'll have 6. So I would say that I've checked off this goal. And then the next goal was to read 2 horror books, which I already talked about. I did that already. Thank you, Kenny, for giving me 2 horror recommendations. And of course, I have plans to read more as we get further and closer into spooky season. So the 2 books that I read this year will not be the last of the horror that I read for the remainder of the year. And then the last goal was to read 48 books, which we already talked about. And now that we're done with the goals, I will scoot back over so we can talk about new releases. So I did a whole video where I talked about books that I was excited to be coming out in 2023. And so we're going to go through that list and see how many of them I have acquired, how many of them I have read, how many of them I have made absolutely no progress on. Some of them may not even be out yet. So first one that I have on the list is X's and O's by Amy Lee, and I did in fact read that in February. Next is All the Dangerous Things. Wow, I completely forgot about this book. I need to put that on a list somewhere so that it is fresh in my mind. I completely forgot I even said I wanted to read this book, but I do want to read this book. The next one is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. And I have been on the fence about this book because I was super excited. The premise sounded really interesting, but I think this came out around like January or something, and from what I've heard, people that have reviewed this book, they haven't really loved it. So I'm kind of nervous to go into it. Not saying that I'm not gonna read it ever, but it just hasn't been like at the top of my priority, you know, list of books to read so far this year. Next is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. And I have not read this yet. This book I think just came out last month, or what was the month before? I don't know. But it's a fairly new release, so I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I do have it on hold through Libby, so whenever it's available, I guess I'll, you know, go ahead and read it and pick it up. Haven't heard too many people talk about it since it's been out. I'm hoping that it's good. The next one is Once More Worth Feeling by Alyssa Sussman, and I have read that. I actually quite enjoyed that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to other people. I would only recommend that book to people who are like a big fan of musical theater and also enjoy rom-coms. Like, you would probably have to have like the two of those together for the book to be a hit for you. I would say that if either one of those things don't sound appealing, I would not recommend. The next one is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I have not read this, but I have heard some decent things about it, so I'm definitely going to prioritize this. I definitely, you know, think that I will read this before the end of the year. The next one is The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and I have heard exceptional things about this book so far anyway, considering the fact that it just came out towards the end of June. I've heard pretty fantastic things about it. Now, that is kind of common for a book to come out and you hear all these rave reviews about it, and then as time goes on, the bad reviews start coming out. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of time. And then the last book on the list is One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. And this was a book that is not like high on my priority list. I'm not even sure if the book is out yet. I think it comes out in July, but I don't remember like what day it comes out. It's a book that I want to read just because I've already read the other two books in the series, so I kind of want to see like what this one is going to bring to the table. But like also like if I don't read it this year, I'm okay with that. And the last category that I'm going to go through are my 5-star predictions. So I did a whole video on books that I was predicting would be 5-star reads for me this year. Again, I will leave a card somewhere and I will also link it down below in the description. But so far, out of the ones that I said I wanted to read that I thought would be 5 stars, I think I have read 4 of them. I don't remember how many there were total. So far, the books that I have read are How to Survive Your Murder, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Once More Worth Feeling, and The Reunion. And what I can tell you is that none of these books have been 5 stars for me, but hold on before you pass judgment, okay? I'm very picky with my 5 stars, and some of these have been very close to 5 stars. I gave How to Survive Your Murder 4.5 stars. Once More Worth Feeling, I gave 4.25 stars. So I would say that I'm doing pretty darn well. Now, as far as Before the Coffee Gets Cold, that was a little bit of a flop for me. And then The Reunion, I just read recently. And here's the thing. That is a book that I think I probably need to reread. I gave it 3.5 stars. But I don't think that I was fully in the right mindset to read that book. I was very distracted. There were a lot of things happening in this book that I normally would like eat up. Like, it's all about like the Hollywood industry and stuff like that. It's the kind of thing that I would just like gobble up like Sunday dinner. But I just wasn't like focused. I was very distracted, stressed, had a lot going on, and I just wasn't giving it the attention that it really deserved. So I gave it 3.5 stars, but I think if I reread it, it is possible that I could rate it could rate it higher. But there are still at least 4 other books on that list, maybe more. I think it might be like 6 other books on that list that I haven't read yet because they're scheduled for me to read in the second half of the year. So if you're interested to know what those books are, you can go check out that video. But hopefully those will be 5 stars. The takeaway from this video for me is that I need to prioritize a couple of things. Those things being new releases that I said that I was excited about. Specifically All the Dangerous Things, because I completely forgot all about that book. I also need to prioritize manga so I can hit that goal. I need to prioritize Christian books so I can hit that goal. And I need to prioritize series. I am not going to pretend like that goal is going to be met by the end of the year, but it's okay. So whatever series I wanted to finish that I'm not going to finish, I actually did a whole video last year on series that I wanted to read and finish this year, and I don't think I've read a single one on that list, but I will link it down below in the description and as a card in case you want to see what I said I was going to read and haven't read. In doing this reflection, it kind of has gotten me thinking about like what my goals are going to be for next year. So obviously that video won't come out until much later in the year, but the gears are already turning. I'm already making some plans. So yeah, that's the end of this video, guys. Let me know down below how you guys are doing so far in the year. How is your progress going? Are you meeting your goals? Are you exceeding your goals? Are there some goals that you haven't met that you need to, you know, find ways to prioritize? What kind of like tactics are you using to prioritize certain goals so that you can meet them by the end of the year? Let me know all that down below in the not in the description box. You can't write in that box. Let me know that down below in the comments. As always, my socials and links will be down below in the description box. Do me a huge favor and like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you are not already subscribed. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.